Hey there, gang. How's it going? It's Todd Nauck. Welcome to my live stream. Sorry if you were trying to join this first live stream. We're having some problems with the OBS here and getting everything to sync up, but it looks like I had to kind of start over, so hopefully you were able to join me here on this new art live stream. Thanks for joining me, and let's get cracking. So, this is an illustration of the Hulk that I had penciled, did some digital pencils. You can see that video here on my channel. So if you didn't get a chance to watch it, you can always go back and check that out and see how the pencils came together. So now we're going to do the ink. So I've already created my ink over here on the right hand side. I've already created my ink folder and my inking layer, and I have my pencils folder here. So I'm just going to lower the opacity of the pencils just by clicking this bar down to about maybe like a 32% opacity, so that the black lines are now more of a gray. So now I can come in here and do my digital inks on a whole new separate layer that is just above this pencil layer. I'll probably just zoom in here on the Hulk's face so we can get some good idea of the details. So I'm using some Frendon brushes I purchased from I forgot the website, but if you search Frendon brushes, that's where I got these, and I've been using these for a while. Still kind of getting used to them, still learning how to use them, but I like these a little bit better than the stock pens that come with Clip Studio Paint. I'm using Clip Studio Paint as my program on a Wacom MobileStudio 13, Wacom MobileStudio Pro 13. So using a G-nib here, and I'm going to use about a size, we'll start with a size 50 nib size. I'm going to start with the hair. Oops, got some purple here. I want to actually select black and start to start with the hair because it overlaps the face. Kind of like to work, much like inking traditionally, I like to work foreground to background. And I'll continue to share my tips and tricks as I go here. And maybe I'll try to address a question or two if I can, while I draw. I can't promise I can answer everyone's question or comment or respond to every question or comment, but I'll do my best if I am able. So thanks for understanding, thanks for your patience, and yeah, hopefully we can have some fun here. I've been pretty busy here these past several weeks, working on some Marvel stuff and some other art responsibilities, so I haven't been able to stream as much as I had earlier this year, but definitely glad to be back, and we'll see how frequently I can stream here as we go through the summer. Probably won't be daily like it was through the spring, but hopefully I can stream. I'd like to shoot for at least once a week if I can. So I just letting the pen nib kind of feather. I want a little more feathering here as we move towards, as you see here, I penciled this highlight in. So I want the lines to kind of feather and fade towards that highlight, create a nice kind of hair texture. And so I pull from the darker part of the hair towards that lighter area. Then I like to use the black and the clear. Over here on the left-hand side in my color palette here, there is a little checkerboard here. That's clear. That's a clear color. So it's not. I'm not erasing or using white. I'm using clear here to, in a sense, kind of erase lines, but I still get the control of the nib. I still get the line variation more so than I would with just using an eraser tool. So I like using the clear a lot whenever I'm doing my inks. And for certain coloring techniques as well, which will be a separate video. We will not be inking or doing colors for Hulk in this video, just strictly the inked line art. So yeah, switch to clear to kind of sculpt that hair, kind of clean it up, clean up the shape, and I switch back to black. So it's just kind of a switching back and forth between clear and black. Let's see, we'll answer a question here. Do I do my professional work digitally or traditionally, or does it depend? I'd say more it depends. I utilize both digital and traditional in my comic book work. I use digital for the earlier stages, like the sketch of a cover or a layout for the interior pages. And I use digital for pencils, the pencil artwork, like you see here, the Hulk pencils. That's the same kind of work I do for my my professional stuff. And then I will take the digital pencils and print those out in light blue lines on actual artboard. And from there, I will ink traditionally over those blue lines on the artboard. So that I'm a bit more proficient at traditional inks over digital inks. I'm still building my digital inking skill, but I also like having a one-of-a-kind piece of physical artwork when I'm done with the project. So so inking traditionally allows me to still have some you know, that original physical art as well. So I don't often do inks for my professional stuff unless it's a specific thing that my client needs the artwork done completely digitally. Then you know, that's what they pay for. That's what they're wanting. That's what I'm going to give them. But with Marvel, most everything I do is inked traditionally, which helps a lot. I'd say 99% of the stuff I do is inked traditionally. But I'd say I use digital for pencils and sketch layout pretty much 100% of the time. I'm gonna cut through with some clear here, add some texture to the hair. Now I'm going to power this down to the size 30 nib, get a little finer point. See, we got the center part of the hair here, where the hair pulls from the base of his head out and around. Let's see, there's another question here. Do I have any advice on comic character body pose? Let's see, what would I advise on that? Some of the things I think about when it comes to the body pose of a character is, one, who is the character? And how would that character move? What is their body type? What is their body shape? Like the Hulk, he's going to kind of lumber because he's a big, bulky, hulky monster. Where the way Spider-Man moved would be completely different to the Hulk, because Spider-Man's thinner, he's more spindly, he's more spider-like. He's not this big hulking brute like the Hulk. So the ways they move are going to be completely different, in my opinion, and from my experience. You wouldn't see the Hulk kind of in some of those contorted poses that you'd see Spider-Man. And then you consider this for, well, how would Captain America move? How would Batman move? How would Superman move? How would Wonder Woman move? And so that's the way I like to approach it, is thinking about the character, both their body type, body shape, their powers and abilities, what are the aspects of the character, as well as what is the personality of the character. That comes into play too. Because when we are drawing comics, we're not solely drawing a cool pose. We're also, I think, from my experience and my opinion, is we are bringing these characters to life. And these characters have personalities. These characters act, you know? We're making them act on the page. So I want to keep that in mind. I don't want to draw the character in a way that is not the way they would act, you know? That would not be consistent with the character's personality or values or you know, physical attributes of the character. Like I said, like with the Hulk versus Spider-Man, you know, physically they're going to be different. They're going to move their bodies a bit differently. So those are things I think about initially. And then two, what is the situation they're in? What's going on? How are they moving through their environment? For me, it's like I play this movie in my head, and then I pause the movie, and then switch the angles around as necessary. Kind of like bullet time in the Matrix movies. You know how the camera just kind of pans around Neo, and you know he's doing that, you know, bending over backwards, avoiding the bullet, and then the camera spins around. That's kind of how I play it in my head, but not as clear as like it would be in the movie. It's kind of like most of the things I see in my mind are a ghost image. It's like it's rarely is it a crystal clear image in my head that I then translate onto the page. It's more like I think I've said this in other art videos. It's have you seen those showers? You might have them even in your home where it's that frosted glass where you can't see clearly through, but you can see there's a shape behind the glass. You know, if you know there's a family member or roommate in the shower, you know, and you know there's a person behind it, but you can't quite see all the features clearly. It's kind of like that. It's like seeing frosted glass for me through frosted glass. So I get an idea of what it is I want to draw, but then I make edits and changes once I start putting lines down on paper. So it keeps me freed up to let the illustration take on the life it needs to. I'm not so beholden to the image that's in my head. Sometimes I am, but I'd say a lot of the times I'm not. Because once I start putting the lines down on paper and it starts to become more concrete for me, I might start making different decisions to based on how is this actually working out in real life on the paper. Because sometimes the thing I see in my head or kind of see in my head might not actually quite work out the way I might want or think it can when it comes to putting it down on the page. So I allow myself that freedom to edit as I go and see what I discover in that aspect of the journey. I'm going to power down to a size 20 nib here for a little tighter detail here in the face, like here around the nose. So those are things I think about when it comes to body poses. And then also exaggeration. Exaggeration is another thing, especially in comics. It's we're communicating representationally, so not everything works exactly the same as it has to in real life. Those contortionistic poses that we can put Spider-Man in aren't necessarily always realistic, but it makes it fun and exciting in a comic book format. So, but we also have to know how far we can push the bounds of reality, but still keep some believability in reality. And a lot of that for me comes with just trial and error, just experimenting. What's the right amount of pushing the envelope, and what is maybe going a little too far, and then just kind of honing it in from there. But that's the fun about drawing comics, is the creativity, and we can experiment and try things. So I'm a big proponent of experimentation and trial and error with our art. Give it a whirl, just give it a try. I mean, that's what erasers are for, you know? That's what the Control-Z button is for. If I don't like the way something turned out, I'll just erase and try it again, or I will just Control-Z if I'm drawing digitally and just make it disappear, and then try again. So hopefully these things help you and you other artists that might be in the same position of figuring out your superhero character, and even just normal characters like your Aunt Mays and J. Jonah Jamesons. They have poses too. Maybe Aunt May isn't swinging from a web, but she is interacting in the environment that she is in, and she has to be in some sort of pose, whether she is walking through a door, having a seat and drinking a cup of coffee at the kitchen table, or greeting someone, maybe shaking their hand. J. Jonah Jameson shaking his fist about, where are those photos of Spider-Man? Where's Parker? So with those photos, or throwing a newspaper, or slamming a door. These are poses as well, and things we have to think about and consider when we are putting together our page. So just working on the eyes now here. Put some wrinkles and crinkles around his eyes. Little crinkle around his nose here. Kind of adding a few more details that maybe I didn't put in when I was penciling. What inking tools would I suggest? Are you referring to digitally or traditionally? If it's digitally, I like using these Friendin brushes that I got from, I forget the name of the website, or the guy who made and sold these brushes. It was a good deal, good package. So I use Friendin, F-R-E-N-D-E-N. Now, if you're inking traditionally, you can see a lot of the tools I use in my traditional inking videos. I personally am a Pigma Micron multiliner guy. It's just the brand I've used most of my career and I feel most confident with, but most any brand of multiliner works for me. Some people like to use Croquill nibs and the dip pen, some ink with brush. It just sometimes it takes just getting some of these tools, maybe not get the most expensive ones just yet, but some of the maybe lesser brand or more inexpensive brands, experiment with a little bit, see what works best for you, and then you can invest in the higher quality pens or brushes as needed. If you aren't quite sure which tool works best for your style or skills. I do use a little brush. I use the Pentel Pocket brush pen for my brush work, and also the Zebra brush pen, but these are, again, more along the lines of a marker or a multiliner rather than a dip pen or brush in the Croquill ink, which I have great respect and admiration for the inkers that work that way. It's a very, very classic and very, very beautiful way to work. I think multiliner and marker technology has really probably improved over the past many years or decades. So I do, that's what I use and it works for me, and I know a lot of other artists use those as well. So it really just depends on what you like working with. But those are some things you can kind of experiment with. In fact, when I was at the art supply store earlier this year, before the whole stay-at-home order for COVID-19 kind of kicked in, I picked up a Croquill dip pen so I could experiment and practice with that more. Haven't had time to do that, but at least got myself in that realm. In fact, I need to find out where I put those new art supplies I bought earlier this year. I'm sure they're around here somewhere. Maybe one day if I feel proficient at those, maybe I can do a video on how to use those tools, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime too terribly soon, though. Collarbone action going here. Let's see, here's another question. How much of your current style was intentional, as in, the look you wanted, and how much was organic? I don't know if I have specific ratios of intentional versus organic. I would say it's 100% intentional and 100% organic, if that's even possible. You know, I think many of us artists, especially professional comic book artists, we have our initial influences, the people that inspired us to like say, I want to try that. I want to be a comic book artist. And so that's definitely, I think, a big part of, I think any artist kind of defining their style is what art appeals to them, what styles have appealed to them. And like I enjoy like the slightly more cartoony styles, like an Arthur Adams, where it kind of walks that line between realistic and cartoony. Like I always see it as a spectrum. There's like real life drawing on one side, and then like really, really super cartoony on the other side. And then I kind of liked the guys that fell right in the middle, or I felt were in the middle of that spectrum. So that'd be people like Arthur Adams, Walter Simonson, Rick Leonardi, a lot of my favorite X-Men artists, especially from the 1980s into the early 90s. I felt really kind of walked that line. And so that was a line I was striving for. And those are the styles I gravitate towards just because I like to look at them. And so when I was doing my art, since I'm looking at my art, I wanted to do this as something kind of in that same vein, because that's what excited me. That's what made me excited about comic art and seeing comic art, is that's what appealed to me. Some people prefer a more realistic style, and that's totally cool. That's what they like. And that probably is the direction that they move in, because that's what they like. So I think our style is based off what we like, then also our skills, and then also just kind of, you know, the day-to-day doing of the art, you know, meeting deadlines, and you find your shorthand in how to convey shapes to get the work done in a timely fashion while still doing the best art that we are capable of with each given project. So I think those are two or three of the key factors of one, finding their style. And I often say we don't necessarily always find our style as much as our style finds us. That's why it's a big matter of working, studying, practicing our art, and letting it evolve. My artwork and my art style has evolved over the year. There's this natural Todd Nauck flavor that people see in there, that from either when you look at my earliest stuff to my most recent stuff, there's that flavor. But then hopefully people see the evolution of my skills, and the more recent stuff looks tighter than what I did when I was younger. So and that has come through my practice, study, and just drawing every day. I can't help but evolve. And I think that's kind of a fun aspect of art, is the evolution of it. In one, seeing the artists that we enjoy evolve, and then me as an artist in just doing the work I do, seeing it evolve over time. And sometimes you don't even realize how much you've evolved until you go back and look at what you did 2, 3, 4 years ago, 10 years ago, a lifetime ago. And it's like, whoa, the way I draw now is really quite different than what I did then, because I know more now. I've evolved more now. So I would say, yeah, 100% intentional and 100% organic. I know that math is kind of wibbly wobbly, but that's my wheelhouse. That's where I thrive. I thrive in the wibbly wobbly. Just zooming in here and drawing these veins. I'm letting the pen kind of give these really kind of bloopy texture lines. It's kind of a thick, a thin, a thick, a thin. Really kind of gives a more organic look to the veins. You know, they're not just straight lines, but there are these kind of. In fact, I want to reflect that more in some of the other veins that I had started drawing. I wasn't really doing that sort of technique, so now I want to go back and redo them so they look consistent all the way through. So just going through here and just add some wobble to the line, just allowing the pen to have some pressure. And I add more pressure and less pressure. It's kind of add more, add less, add more, add less, add more, add less to get that kind of wobbly line, to get a nice texture to the veins. Let's see, I did not finish Hulk's face here. I'm going to come up here and finish his teeth. I'm going to power down to like a size 15.10 so I can get some real nice, clean, tight details, and the line work doesn't muddy up. If this was too thick of a pen nib, it would be very, in fact, I can demonstrate. If I was still using the 50 here for the teeth, actually, it doesn't look too terribly bad, but also it's so thick it makes it look like there's a gap between his teeth, like he's missing teeth. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to a thinner size nib, the 15, like I said, so it's nice and clean and we can see the teeth there. Let's see, I need to go here to the pencil layer. I'm going to adjust his pupil and iris, set a little too high. Just going to move that down. Go back to my pen tool, back to my ink layer. Still using that size 15 nib. And I'm putting in the details of the eye. Right on. Okay, so I'm going to bump back up to, we'll say a 25 for now. All right, put some veins on this shoulder here. We'll get the shoulders done, then we'll get back to the arms. Going to bump up to the 30 here for this big contour here of his shoulder. So I've been working on my digital inks for the past several years here, maybe even actually longer, off and on. And so when I first started doing digital inks, I had zero control of the nib for the pen on the tablet surface here. It was, I really, in many ways, did not like it whatsoever. But with continued practice, I'm learning, how to control the digital inks in a way that I feel more confident in. There's still more things for me to learn. I think there always will be, and that's totally okay. There's more that I can learn here about this app and how to adjust the pen tools. It's just finding the time amidst my actual work projects to refine all that and learn and refine all that. But this is kind of the way I work right now, and it's getting the job done, and it always makes it fun to learn something new and then have that evolution. So it's just making do with what I can at the time. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it can, something I can practice with, let it kind of inform my art knowledge, and then how can I carry that into the next illustration I do. It's just kind of learning and then learning more and learning more. And this is what I know now, and what will I know in the future? Well, it depends on what I'm teaching myself right now. And hopefully I'm learning something and can carry that with me to the next level, whatever that is and whenever it may be. So again, another very wibbly wobbly concept I've thrown at y'all. Don't know if that made sense or not, but as I said just a moment ago, I thrive in the wibbly wobbly. Now we're doing the veins on this other arm here. Even that bloopy texture. Bloops is a term that I learned from my inker friends when I was working at Extreme Studios for Rob Liefeld. Don't know who Rob Liefeld is? He's the guy who created Deadpool and Cable and Domino and all those characters. So I got my start at his studio in the 1990s. That's where I got my big break into being a full-time comic book artist, and it was a lot of fun. So I talked to my, I was a penciler at that time. I did not do my own inks at that time, and so I worked with inkers, and I kind of learned their shorthand for certain words, their nicknames. And so when you have a line here, and we'll just throw a line, like it goes thick, thin, it's kind of like the what would you call that? The kind of teardrop, almost a water effect of the texture of the line. They called those bloops. The bloop, that thick blob of ink. And so we'd say, hey, could you put some more bloops on that? There were the shark teeth. There were the what were some of the other terms? Bloops was one of the big ones. That was one of the big ones. Bloops. Could you put some more bloops on that? And there's actual just regular words like line weight and variation. That's a more official term. But bloops was definitely a nickname that I learned at Extreme. I don't know if other inkers outside of Extreme Studios use that same term, the bloops, but I definitely know we said that at Extreme, and still a word I use in my head when I'm inking. Like, oh, I should put some bloops in this. Should use a bloop texture. B-L-O-O-P, the bloops. So I'd say I probably learned a lot about inking from my friends at Extreme Studios. That kind of style of inking was kind of a basis for me, even though I wouldn't start doing my own inks professionally until about 10 years ago when I was working on Spider-Man. After having worked on Spider-Man for a while, I moved on to doing my own inks. I found an opportunity on a Spider-Man short story. I asked the editor, hey, would you mind if I did my own inks for this story? He said, can you show me some samples? And I showed him kind of some of the ink stuff I had done. I'd already been inking some of my own covers. That gave me the confidence to ask if I could ink a story of my own that I had penciled, which I hadn't really done much of before, and it was a bit overwhelming. It seemed a bit daunting because I wasn't as fast at inking as I thought I needed to be. But this short story had a nice deadline on it. I'm reworking this part of the shoulder here. I didn't like that big, chunky shape there on his shoulder. It wasn't consistent with his other shoulder. And so my editor said, sure, go for it. So I was able to kind of do the inks, take my time, not feel too rushed with the deadline, and kind of get a feel of, is this something I think I can take on a regular basis? And I had a great time. My editor loved it, and I decided then, it's like, I want to keep doing my own inks over my own pencils. This is really fun to see the line art from the initial sketch all the way through, and then pass that on to the colorist. All right, let's just go ahead and finish off this whole right arm here now. Who's my favorite inker? Oh man, gosh, it's hard to say because there's so many fantastic inkers out there. I'd say one inker, I mean, again, there are a lot of fantastic inkers. I've worked with many wonderful inkers over the course of my career. I'm very thankful to have worked with them. But one inker that I've really enjoyed seeing his work, he's a legendary inker, actually enthralled by his inks. His name is Klaus Janson. He's been working at least since the 1980s. Back when I was a kid. I think he did a lot of work with Frank Miller on Daredevil back in the day, back in the 1980s. Some of those super mega classic Daredevil stories. He's worked a lot with John Romita Jr. here over the when John Romita Jr. was still at Marvel. I don't know if he followed him over to DC Comics, but I love the textures that Klaus Janson does. It's a very different style than the Extreme Studio style. I think that's what I like about it, is because it is so unique. I don't know if any other inker that quite inks like Klaus Janson. Klausjanson. Klaus Janson. Look him up. Just really amazing texture work that he does. He even inked one of my, still fairly early in my career. When Lex Luthor was running for president, I was still on Young Justice there at DC Comics, and DC did a President Lex one shot, and so it was an anthology of several different stories, and so there was a 3-page story that I drew, and Klaus Janson inked it, and that was really a wonderful honor to have my pencil lines inked by a legend like Klaus. So yeah, he's definitely one that just really is so different that it really is fun for me to see his work, because I learned something just by looking at the mastery of what he does. Back in the day, you were a huge Tom Palmer fan for his inks with Colin on Tomb of Dracula and Buscema on the Avengers. Yes, Tom Palmer is a fantastic inker. I totally agree. I enjoyed his work on that stuff as well. Turns out that his son, Tom Palmer Jr., was the assistant editor on Young Justice, and was able to get his dad to ink one of my covers for Young Justice. The one with Secret and the Hal Jordan Spectre. When Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, before he came back as the Green Lantern, he was the Spectre for a time. He made a guest appearance in our Young Justice series to help Secret figure out some things about who she is or was. Big long storyline. It's better if you just read it. Young Justice, I think they're collecting it all in trade paperback, so the first 4 volumes are out now, so you can look up Young Justice books 1 through 4, the original Young Justice, the one I worked on. And then book 5 should have been out here in June. I don't know if the COVID situation has delayed the printing and release of that book. Hopefully not, because it'll be great to have the entire series now finally in trade paperback. But having Tom Palmer Sr. Ink one of my covers was an incredible honor as well. I also had other inking legends. Terry Austin, who inked a lot of my favorite pencilers' work, like Arthur Adams and Rick Leonardi. He would ink those guys. He did some inks on some of our Young Justice stuff. So I really got a great opportunity during Young Justice, still fairly early in my career, to get to work with all these legendary inkers. It was really like a fanboy dream come true. Now onto the fingers here. Have I studied anatomy? Yes, I did study anatomy at the Art Institute of Dallas, the school I went to. I had like, I think, was it maybe close to 5, at least 5 life drawing classes over the 2 years. And so I did study anatomy. We worked off the Bern Hogarth book, Dynamic Anatomy. That's where I got most of my anatomy studies from initially. Still always, studying anatomy or referencing real life whenever I can, whenever I have a problem I need to solve, not just relying solely on my imagination, though I do love drawing from my imagination. I also like to draw from real life whenever possible to just kind of level up my game a bit, that translating real life into my own lines and shapes is a lot of fun, and can really help me evolve my work. So yes, definitely study anatomy. Definitely. I think every artist should, no matter if you're doing a realistic style or a cartoony style. You want to know how it all fits together so that you can, like they say, learn the rules so you can break the rules. See, we'll tackle another question here. We'll scroll back here. Let's see. Who is my favorite character for drawing and why? Wow. I don't really necessarily have one favorite character. I mean, I guess I could say superheroes are my favorite types of characters to draw, just because I like the costumes, the superpowers, a lot of characters I really care about, like Spider-Man and the X-Men, etc. So those are the types of characters I like to draw. Now from there, do I have one specific character I like to draw more than others? Not necessarily. I like to mix it up. I like to keep things fresh for me. So while Spider-Man and X-Men rank as some of my favorites to read and to draw, it's fun to be able to draw a Superman every now and again, or a Wonder Woman, or a Green Lantern, or a Fantastic Four member, or any number of Avengers. Just so that I can keep it fresh. I like to try drawing other characters, try drawing other powers or costumes, and but I'm not restricted solely to superheroes. I like drawing all sorts of other type of, I guess in a sense, fantasy or fantastical stuff. And when I say fantasy, I'm not necessarily referring to sword and sorcery. Not that I'm saying I don't enjoy doing that. I do that as well, but just like Spider-Man is fantasy, any character that doesn't really exist. Star Wars is fantasy. So I enjoy that, the fantasy world of so many different properties. And properties, that word meaning, the Marvel superheroes, the DC superheroes, those are different properties. Star Wars, Masters of the Universe, Transformers, G.I. Joe, all of those are different properties. I appreciate y'all's questions. I have the live stream up here on my iPad, so I'm watching along with y'all, so I'm able to catch a few more questions than I do. All I have to do is just kind of look up. So feel free to post your question, and hopefully I can address some more of those. Unfortunately, I can't promise I can answer everyone's question, but I'll try to answer as many as I'm capable of, in case you missed the top of the show here. Yeah, so thanks, gang. So glad you're here. Hopefully you're having a good time. And if you like what you see, feel free to leave me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss out on future art live streams and art videos. So we'll finish off his midsection here, and then we'll go and tackle that other arm. Any advice for artist block? Yes, actually, I'll kind of answer that question here now, but after we're done, check out my frequently asked questions playlist, because that is, I think, the number 2 video in that playlist, where I address this topic a little more in depth. But the kind of the shorthand Cliff Note version answer, if you don't mind, for a question like this, just so that we can kind of talk about it now, since you took the time to ask now, I should give you a little something. Maybe call it a preview or a sneak peek at the video that you'll hopefully get a chance to check out here in my frequently asked questions video, which there are a lot more of those videos I need to do here to, because there are a lot of other frequently asked questions that I get that I can do in that sort of format. But again, we're going to focus on how to deal with artist block. For me, there's so many different factors as to that can bring about artist block. So sometimes we have to figure out, where's the artist block coming from? Is it coming from being I like to go through what I call the checklist. Let's go through the checklist. Physical. How am I doing physically? Am I exhausted? Am I tired? Do I need to sleep? Do I need to eat? Do I need to exercise? Do I need to get a little, expend some energy, getting out of the chair and walking around a little bit, which I rarely ever do. I really need to get better at doing more daily exercise, especially in this line of work. Oh yeah, we're going to work on this other arm next. That's right. So, so how am I doing physically? Do I need to eat? Do I need to sleep? Do I need to exercise? That can sometimes be something that kind of can shake me out of an artist block sort of situation. How am I doing mentally and emotionally? Am I worried? Am I stressed about something? Is there something else that I'm thinking about that's kind of an app in my brain that's running in the background that's using up the bandwidth? Am I stressed about getting taxes done? Am I stressed about a relational issue? Things like that. Am I worried about something that is coming up, a dentist appointment, things like that? Whatever it is am I emotionally or mentally concerned or about something, or feeling heavy about something? So sometimes that's something I need to deal with, and then I find I'm freed up for my illustrations. Am I comparing my work to other people's work? I can look and it's like, oh, Jim Lee is awesome. Nothing I do ever works out right. Now I'm disappointed and I have no motivation to draw. I can't think of anything to draw because I'm comparing my work to someone else's work. And I learned this quite a while back, still fairly early in my career. Stop doing that. I don't have to do that anymore. Don't compare my artwork to anyone else's artwork. That's not necessary. Compare my artwork to my own artwork. What am I learning, and what did I do today? What did I do yesterday? That's what I need to focus on. Because see, Jim Lee has his own talent, his own skills, his own opportunities to learn and develop. He's his own person, and I'm my own. What I bring is different to the table, is different than Jim Lee or any other artist. I want to be Todd Nauck. I don't need to be Jim Lee because we already have Jim Lee. Do you know who that is? His name is Jim Lee. And that goes for any other artist that any person could think of. So am I comparing my work to someone else's work that's causing toxic thoughts and feelings? If so, I gotta turn that ship around. I've got to realign, readjust my thinking. So this way I can, one, get back to having fun. And if I'm having fun, I'm more apt to learning new things and leveling up my skills because I'm just enjoying the journey and the process. That's why I think art is a journey. It's not a destination. You don't get to the place where you're good. You don't get to good land and it's like, okay, I'm good. I'm done learning. No. It's always learning something new. Good can maybe become even a little bit better. And that little bit better might end up getting a little bit more better. You just never know. It's most of these steps on our journey, we hope, are forward. Sometimes we have steps backwards. That's okay. That's called being human. But if we allow ourselves to keep trying to move forward, we stand a better chance of actually getting that forward momentum. But we can't expect perfection every time. And that's another thing that kind of ties into that, is when I learned to let go of perfectionism, and it's something I struggle with regularly, and I have to continue to catch myself. I don't do that perfectly. So you see, it's kind of this Mobius strip, this catch-22 that I have to be mindful of, is that, yeah, even trying not to be a perfectionist, I don't do that perfectly. So it's this imperfection loop, which I try to allow myself, but always trying to seek, and I shouldn't even say always, I often try to keep that mindset of how can I learn, how can I grow, whether that be in art or being as a human being. This is my mindset. Or I try to make my mindset. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I forget, but when I can catch myself and remember, oh, wait a second, I'm thinking toxic thoughts. I don't need to do this. I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to go get something to eat, have that delicious bowl of Apple Jacks, come back. And I'm joking. I haven't had a bowl of Apple Jacks in like 15 years. I've totally forgotten what they tasted like. But it's my joke cereal. It's the one I go to. I'm getting off course here. Take a break, have a snack. Better yet, eat an apple. Eat a handful of almonds. Those are my snacks nowadays. And then come back with a fresh eye and a fresh attitude. And it's like, okay, let's try to have fun and see where things go from there. Because we're all going to have challenges in our art, but I believe if we can face them with an attitude of trying to have fun, just trying. It doesn't mean guaranteed I'm going to have fun, but at least if I'm trying to have the mindset of having fun, I'm more likely going to have fun. I've set myself up in a target-rich environment to hopefully get to that place of fun. And I found once I started doing that, my art started leveling up in new ways. I started learning new things, and I felt more confidence in my art. Not that I always feel this perfectly, but I want to be in that target-rich environment. And so I've come to find if I'm able to take my thoughts captive, then I stand a better chance. But always having the grace of knowing I might not always do it perfectly, and that's okay too. So those are some of the things I think of when it comes to artist block, to help me kind of dislodge from artist block. There's one other thing I do, and that's do I need to learn something new? Have I plateaued? And I need to challenge myself, putting myself in that place of being challenged. It's frustrating for the brain. I think we naturally want to gravitate towards what is easiest, what is the path of least resistance, I think, as our natural inclination, just as human beings. But if I put myself in a place to learn something new, like drawing digitally, has been one of the biggest things for me to learn to do something new here these past 2-3 years, and still so much more I need to learn. It allows me to evolve and grow my art, and hopefully enliven my creativity, where I can do more, do something different, and try something different, and hopefully have something new or different, or maybe even better to show my audience. So there might be some other stuff in that video that I can't remember, so do check out the what to do about or how do I handle artist block video in my frequently asked questions playlist here on my channel. So hopefully these things kind of give you at least a good foundation, a base work to build from. Is inking digitally slower than inking traditionally for me? Pardon me. For me, yes. Inking digitally is still a little bit slower than inking traditionally, just because I've been inking traditionally for, well, most my life, and I've been doing it professionally here for the past 10 years. So I'm going to be more adept at that because I'm more practiced in that. So the more I practice my digital inks, the more I learn. I'm faster at digital inks now than I was last year. I've learned new tips. I've learned new tricks. I've learned new techniques. I've learned confidence with the tools here that I can use to ink. But my confidence in my traditional inks still exceeds what I can do digitally. So for the time being, yes, inking traditionally for me currently is still more time efficient. But we'll see where things go for me digitally with the inks. And that's what makes it fun. It's like it's a fun challenge. It's like playing a video game. If video games weren't a challenge, would we still want to play them? If Mario just always, he never fell off into those pits, if he never got chomped by a Goomba, would it be fun? It's like there's no challenge here. I'm just walking through the game. It'd be kind of boring. It's the same with art. Art is my video game. That's why I don't really play many video games. It's because if I have the free time, I want to draw. I want to draw. This is my where I can, you know, be challenged. Not to say I don't enjoy video games. I do. I just don't play them as much as maybe anyone years younger than me. So it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is. So for me, it's like the challenge of, how do I figure out how to draw this pose? How do I come up with something new? How do I come up with something different? How do I draw this character I've never drawn before? That's my challenge. It's like, at times it's frustrating, but you learn the pattern, you learn the tip, you learn the trick, you learn how to overcome that challenge, and now you have that in your arsenal. I now know the back, forth, A, B, up, down, left. And now I know that code for how to draw a thigh muscle. But, you know, I might encounter a thigh from a different angle. How do I draw this thigh from this angle? You know what? It's a new chance for me to learn how to beat that boss and move on, move further in the game of art. So that's how I think of it. And that's what kind of keeps me motivated to keep on drawing. It's like, I'm going to keep going through this art adventure, through this art journey. Again, I got a little wibbly wobbly there, gang. But you know me. That's how I roll. Appreciate the grace. As a Spider-Man artist, what do I think makes a dynamic pose? We kind of addressed this earlier. I'll kind of touch on it here again. It's really thinking of, how does Spider-Man move and what is the situation he's in? And then from there, how do I tell that story? How do I make him act on the page? And the motivation is, you know, whatever the story is at that moment. Is he trying to get away from Venom? Is he trying to stop Dr. Octopus? Is he trying to rescue, you know, J. Jonah Jameson from the Scorpion? You know, it's like, what is the situation? Now, how is he going to move in that moment? You know, what moment in time are we capturing in this scene? And then how do we, and then that's where the dynamics for me comes in. Hope that makes sense. Tears here in his pants. Kind of like I was doing those bloops in the veins here, where it's kind of that textured line. Kind of looking for that textured line in the tear in his pants as well, because it's all that frayed thread. You know, all the. Maybe I can figure out some coloring technique when we do the colors in the future video or live stream. Maybe as early as next week if all goes well. So I want to convey that torn cloth texture. So I think about kind of how the cloth kind of overlaps and wrinkles, using slightly thicker lines at certain places to convey a sense of shadow and depth. To really give it that shredded pants vibe. How do I make the nib kind of dance across the screen here? Or if I was thinking this traditionally, how do I make it dance across the page or the paper? Oh, and some people ask, what size canvas am I drawing on? This illustration is done on a 9x12 digital canvas here. I made this little white sheet of paper here. Let's like we get a chance to take a look at how Hulk has come so far. It's pretty fun to see the progress. So we just have this the rest of this right leg, and then that whole left leg, and the feet, and we are done with it. We'll be done with the inks for this video, but that's still time to come. So, but this whole image here on white that's 9 inches tall, or 9 inches wide by 12 inches tall. You get a little bit of his thigh muscle in here. A little bit more of a thicker line at the bottom here of his pants to really kind of convey the shadow overlapping his lower leg, overlapping the skin. Something I am keeping in mind while I ink here is trying to keep all the lines closed off. This will come in handy during the coloring stage. We'll talk more about that when I'm coloring in the next Hulk video. Let's see. Someone here is posting a question. They're setting up a submission to Image Comics, and you're wondering what you could do to increase your chances to get an approval from them on the story. You know what? I don't know. I have not done a comic for Image, or I haven't, it's been about 11 years since I did my Wild Guard comics. And back then, I pitched my comic back in 2003. So it's been quite a while. I don't know what the setup there is at Image. But I would say if it's like how they used to do it, where you have your synopsis of the series plus the first 5 pages, I think. If it's still that, make sure those first 5 pages look great. Really bring your best work. Proofread. Make sure you don't have any grammatical errors in either your pitch, your synopsis of the series, or the lettering of your comic. Have someone else go over your work as a fresh eye to make sure there are no spelling errors, because that can really be a detractor if there's improper spelling or grammar. Grammar, I think, really still, and punctuation really still counts. Spelling counts. Other than that, I wish you all the best. I hope what you have is what Image is looking for. I hope that works out well for you. I wish I had more advice or suggestions there, but really, if you've got a solid story, if it's something that they're looking for, then I think you're as set up as best you can be. I don't know if there's ever any 100% guarantee, but I think all any of us can do is do our best work, and hope it finds the right person to get that right opportunity. So I do wish you all the best in that. I truly do. All right, just get the last toes here on this one foot. I don't think it'll be time to move over to the other foot, or a whole other leg. When I was a beginner, what do I think was the hardest thing for me to learn? When I was a beginner, the hardest thing for me to learn was everything. It was so overwhelming. Everything was difficult. Everything was a challenge for me. So whether it be anatomy, poses, storytelling, design of how to put those panels together, it was all a challenge. It was all very difficult. So that's the thing about when we're beginners. Everything is going to be a pretty big challenge. It's hard for me to pinpoint like what one thing was a challenge for me, because when I think back to that time, it's like, oh man, there was just so much to learn. But the thing is, it was fun. I still had fun. There was always, I guess, and some of those things I needed to learn was how do I do what I like to do better. So there was so much room for improvement. But I'd probably say storytelling was the hardest thing for me to learn. I'll probably say that because that was kind of a consistent thing I was getting at my portfolio reviews is, you know, my layouts and where I was placing characters on the page. There was, I really had to learn how to structure a page and balance a page and create correct reader eye flow. So that was probably one of the hardest parts of the puzzle for me, now that I think about it, more so than poses or anatomy, because I was already kind of learning that at the Art Institute. But anything I was learning about how to draw the comics, the language of communicating visually on a comic book page, that I was teaching myself, because they did not teach that at the Art Institute. So I wasn't having an instructor help me out, you know, mentor me or show me how to do that. So I was learning that on my own, just by self-teaching myself. That's a really oddly structured sentence, self-teaching myself. I think it's just teaching myself. I was just teaching myself that it was a slower process. You know, it was like, because I'd only get to see editors at those Dallas conventions once every 4 months. Because back in the late 80s through the early 90s, they did, I think it was a November, March, and a July Dallas Comic Con. And they're actually called the Dallas Fantasy Fair at that time. And so I'd see editors every 4 months. So I had to wait to, you know, for that next con to be able to show off my latest pages and hope that my critique was just a little bit better than the previous one. And oftentimes it was, but it was still pretty slow going. So I would say that learning the mechanics of drawing a comic book page was probably the hardest thing for me starting off. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Here's a question that kind of ties into what I was just talking about. How can a penciler go about breaking in and getting hired on books these days? Well, assuming that the penciler is practicing and working on their storytelling skills, just as I was doing at that time when I was a young artist, get to comic book conventions. Now, what stinks is that because of coronavirus, we have no comic book conventions. San Diego Comic-Con's been canceled. Don't know if New York Comic-Con's going to happen or not. So we're waiting to hear on that. I don't know if Emerald City, that got postponed to August, is still going to happen or not. Just, you know, I guess it all depends on where the coronavirus situation is. But all this to say, there's a lot fewer, I should say. Right now, there are 0 to very few Comic-Cons happening this year. But you know what? This gives you time to get ready for next year. Hopefully next year we'll be back to normal and back to Comic-Cons. So this gives you ample time to work on those skills. Get your art, as good as you can. Keep working on it. Now, in the meantime, what you can do is post regularly. Let's try that word again. Regularly on your social media page. You have an Instagram, you have a Tumblr, you have a Twitter. Keep posting your art regularly. You never know if an editor might come across it and see it. So make sure you're using those hashtags. You draw a picture of Spider-Man, put the hashtag Spider-Man on that illustration. You just never know. I've heard that editors have found artists on social media. So keep doing that. Keep posting regularly. That's kind of like your online portfolio. Make sure your contact info is easily found on your social media. You know, so if it's like an email address or an ability to be DM'd, because you never know if an editor might like what they see. So keep that option open, because you never know who will see what, and how that might allow you your in to the industry. Now, another thing you can do in the meantime, create. If you have a character, you create your own character, tell a story, tell a short story. That's what I did. When I was trying to break in back in the early 1990s, the internet was not public yet, so I didn't have that option, so I was only going to conventions or snail mailing my samples. I don't know if the publishers still accept snail mail samples. Photocopies of your art, don't send the actual art, only send photocopies if they do accept art submissions. Check out each publisher's website to see if they have submission guidelines. Check out Marvel, check out DC, Image, Dark Horse, Skybound, all the others. I can't even think of them. IDW, boom, all those places. Check them out. Valiant. See what their submission guidelines are. Check out their social media account and see if they have any info on there. So do that kind of legwork and research. You gotta get that legwork in there like you're a detective. You gotta look under every rock. Now, if you have time, do your creator-owned stuff. That's what I did with WildGuard. My WildGuard comics were mini comics I made, printed out as ash cans, those little photocopied comic books. I did those back in art school for fun with my other comic book art wannabe friends and classmates. And I thought, you know what? These are so goofy, no one would ever want to see them. Imagine, WildGuard is, imagine it's kind of like if the X-Men met the Tick. If you merge those two ideas together, or the Avengers and the Tick, that would kind of be what WildGuard is. I thought, this is so goofy, no one would ever want to see this. And so I share them with my art school buddies. It's like, oh, please don't ever show these to anyone. Well, I had a friend who betrayed me. Yes, he betrayed me. I'd graduated art school, had moved to live with my family, who were now in Pennsylvania. So I was up there because I grew up in Texas. So I was now in Pennsylvania, and my art school buddies, who still hadn't graduated yet because they were, I think, a year and a half behind me. They met me just before I graduated. So, well, one of my friends thought differently. So he took my mini comics to a convention, showed them to an artist who worked for Rob Liefeld. He liked them, took them back, showed them to Rob Liefeld. Rob liked them. 3 days later, I get a phone call saying, I saw your WildGuard mini comics. I like what you do. Come out to California and work for me. That's how I got my big break. That's why I say you never know who's going to see what. So when my friend Jaime called me to say, tell me what he did and that my comics were now being taken to Rob Liefeld, I was like, first I felt like, Jaime, how could you betray me? And then when he said the artist liked him, his name was Dan Frega, he liked him, he was going to take him to show him to Rob Liefeld, I was like, oh my gosh, Jaime, this is amazing. Thank you for betraying me. Because, you know, it was my own insecurity that I thought no one would want to see this. But you know what I learned in that moment is that when I made my mini comics, when I did my WildGuard mini comics, I did that purely for the passion and the love and what I like to do. So that came through. So while I was getting rejection letters for every submission I sent, every submission got a rejection letter. But what got me noticed was my creator-owned stuff, because the purest form of my passion was on that page. Not to say I didn't have passion in the other pages, but my mini comics were more pure than my sample pages. Because my sample pages, I was doing, well, this is what I think the editors want to see. And I think that was kind of coming through. It's the kind of that hidden vibe that was inside there, which I didn't even realize. But looking back, it's like, that's where I see the difference being. Now, how accurate that is, I don't know. But it's kind of what I believe. Your results may vary, but if you're creating your own property, then you own that 100%. You never know. The world of content is different now than it was then. So you never know if you do like your own comic. You know, you could be like was it Red Raven here? They're pitching their idea to Image. Maybe they'll get that picked up as a series. Even if you don't get picked up at a publisher like Image, you can still publish your comic online. You know, you can go through Webtoon. You can just do it on your own. Like my Jack-O-Lantern comic strip, I do on his own Instagram account. This little comic strip I do whenever I have free time, and I own that property. So if Netflix came to me and said, you know what, somehow we came across your web strip, we think it's cool, we want to make a Netflix series or a movie about this character, I have 100% ownership of that. So, you know, so with WildGuard, I own that 100%. Those are my characters, my creation. I own it. I did it as mini comics. It got me hired in the industry and working full time, which led from working for Rob Liefeld at Extreme Studios to working at DC Comics to launch the Young Justice series, which led me to doing Wild Guard as an Image Comics series, now as a full-fledged comic book, which then led to me getting work at Marvel, where I've been pretty much for the past 13 years or so. I've lost track of the exact number of years. So, but I can always go back to my creator-owned stuff. But if you have something that if you have a comic book, even if it's a mini comic, there are one-off publishers out there that can, you can print up as many copies as you can afford to print. You know, if it's 1, if it's 10, if it's 100, whatever you can afford, then you have that. You take that to a convention when conventions start up, hopefully as soon as possible, but more likely either later this year or next year. You have something you can show an editor. They can have a comic book experience reading your comic. Doesn't have to be, just because your comic isn't Spider-Man doesn't mean they might go, hey, this guy, I like this comic. Could you imagine what he would do on Spider-Man? Could you imagine this guy drawing Nightwing? Could you imagine this gal drawing Superman? It's like whatever it is, you know? Editors are not beholden to only seeing talent in the characters that they edit. They can see talent through any artist. They are that well versed in their craft that, you know, you have Ryan Otley drawing Invincible and he's done with Invincible, he immediately gets snatched up for Amazing Spider-Man because Ryan's just that good. So, and editors can see that and they want that goodness on their books. So, so do creator-owned stuff, because you never know who might see it. You never know if it might strike a chord with an editor, which then leads to that opportunity. Much like for me, my Wild Guard mini comics I thought no one would ever really want to see was exactly what needed to be seen to get me my big break into the industry, starting with working for Rob Liefeld back in the mid-1990s. So, so those are some ways. Again, you know me, wibbly wobbly answers. Some ways to kind of get your work going. Hopefully, you can score a job at some point. You know, it takes time. Your artwork doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be good enough that an editor is willing to take a chance on you. So keep practicing it. Don't worry too much about perfection. You will continue to perfect your art over the course of your lifetime, but you got to get those skills good enough to a point where an editor is willing to take a chance on you, and they'll work with you from there on. So listen to your editors. If you get hired and you get your first gig, listen to your editor and take their advice. Don't let the ego get too much in the way and go, no, I'm not going to do that. This is the way I draw. Listen to them. They are the ones who hired you. Keep in mind what they have to say. Even if you don't disagree, give it a try, because you never know what you might learn through that experience. I've had editors push me in ways that I needed to grow, and I thank them for it. It changed me. It made me a better artist. So I really do appreciate that. Especially if an editor that is willing to invest in you, to tell you, hey, try this, work on this, push farther here, allow yourself to be pushed. Again, as humans, we want the path of least resistance, but sometimes we need to let ourselves be pushed so that we get up that level to that next level. It's like getting trained or coached. You know, if you have a personal trainer or a coach and they keep pushing you, it's like, all right, give me another, and you don't want to do it. You got to let yourself do it so that you can reach that next level, that new height in your work. So again, apologize for the wibbly wobbly answers, but what do I always say? I thrive in the wibbly wobbly. All right, so that takes care of the other foot. So we're going to zoom out here, and then we're going to go over here to the pencil layer, and we're just going to turn this layer off, and boom. Those are the finished inks here for Hulk. Actually, I see something I want to add here. Little fade right there. Beef up some of these dark areas. Sometimes when I'm done, I can always go back and go, oh, you know what? I need to add a little here. I need to add a little there. Give it a little once over. Broaden up that neckline, or that neck muscle, I should say, that line for the neck muscle. And there we go. We'll leave the rest for color. And that's the Hulk there. So I'll post a shot of this on my social media. Oh, pardon me. I'll have a link to the image, to my Instagram image in the video description below a little later on. In the meantime, you can find all my social media links in the video description below, so you can follow me on Twitter. Please follow me on Instagram. If you like this video, leave me a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your chance. Click subscribe, then tap that bell to set your notifications to alert you when I upload new art videos or schedule new art live streams. Hopefully a new art live stream next week where we can do colors here on the Hulk. And yeah, feel free, if you're watching this on replay, feel free to leave a comment. To all you live viewers, thank you so much for the live chat. Thanks for all the great questions. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all the great comments. Sorry I couldn't address every single one, but I do appreciate you interacting with me and with others, and thanks for interacting so kindly and graciously. Thank you for being good people. So I thank you for that. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. I look forward to meeting up with y'all again next week, and hopefully I got some new hardware on the way to hopefully upgrade my YouTube channel even a little bit more. We'll see how soon I can get all that stuff working. But until then, gang, thanks so much. I'm Todd Nauck. Keep on drawing, keep having fun. Take care, everyone.